That's how it always starts. Days move forward. Yet I'm trapped here in this endless cycle. Momentary glimpses are all I have. Subtle reminders of a life long forgotten.
Hi, my name is Wright, and I'm here with the Gig Spotting Network and interviewing Robert Filion, who is, among other things, a director and producer in the local area, Rock Hill. Thank you for having us today and allowing us to come talk to you. I guess first question is, what other, I said among other things, director, producer, what else do you do, and was that always the point to do all of it, or just have?
Yeah, the point is never to bogart all of the positions on a film set, but I've put myself into a position where I can perform at least adequately in all of the key positions, and the reason for that is, being independent normally means you have little to no funds. So, not that I never spend any money, but even on a no-budget production, you'll spend anywhere between $100 and $5,000. Because there are things that you do need, things that need to happen. But so yeah, I write, I produce, I direct, I edit. I'm my own director of photography typically. Normally my own gaffer, and I can do my own sound. A lot of these things I try to dole out to other people that I've been coming up with. We've been kind of growing together to make a sort of collective film unit. But still, some of the key positions that do require a lot of time and a lot of expertise and a lot of knowledge, I just couldn't afford to pay a professional for. So I continue to do those tasks until Hollywood decides that I'm worthy of a budget.
Okay. As far as filmmaking goes, what film started you off, and especially, what were you working with in those days? What kind of equipment?
You're asking what my first movie was?
Yeah, I guess
okay.
What would you count as your first movie, I guess?
Well, I started doing this before college, just tinkering around with my dad's video camera. But when I got into college, I did a lot more tinkering, obviously, and my specific course of study was television production. I couldn't afford film school. I was putting myself through school. But I did take photography and a number of other classes that sort of helped enforce the later filmmaking practices that I would eventually learn to embrace. Photography was key. I think because it taught me everything about framing, using rule of angles, rules of thirds, and balance within a frame. And so that I didn't even answer all of that question. My first actual movie, I'd have to say it was a little thing called Mercenary's Bane, which basically consisted of a bunch of friends and I going out to the woods with sharp stabbing implements and projectile weapons and me with a camera, running around in the woods and violating all sorts of laws.
So a typical Friday night.
Yes, exactly. Only we tried not to drink. But
we tried.
We tried. Yes, we tried. So, a funny story actually from this first thing. Because we were running around through the woods screaming bloody murder, we had fake blood, we had knives, we had guns, people chasing one another through the woods with these things. We actually had the cops called on us. I think a lot of filmmakers have this sort of experience, but they came to us en masse. It was like 3 patrol cars, an ambulance, and they even sent a fire truck to break up the madness. I mean, they actually thought someone was hurt, so they were preparing for the worst. I guess the call that they got was not entirely self-explainable. But, it probably went something like, there are dudes running around through my yard with shotguns and heavy assault rifles and other dudes with knives. You need to come quick.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Oh, yes, it was. And the explanation was even more fun. But I've tuned that out, so I don't remember what exactly that was. But I do know that nobody went to jail that day.
It's been a good explanation.
I honestly think that it probably just went, well, don't do it again, and have a good day.
Well, from there, now was that, you said that was in college?
That was while I was in college, yes. This was, I guess it was the freshman year in college. So yeah, it was probably 91 or 92, ages ago. Okay. I know, before you were born.
I'm an 80s kid, thank you.
Okay, fine.
Okay, so from, that first film in college, and obviously I had to have just been like, okay, this is it. What steps did you take to move on to that and progress and try and get more involved in that field?
Well, I didn't really consider. I guess I kind of considered myself a filmmaker at that point, but looking back in retrospect now, I don't consider myself actually becoming a filmmaker until the late 90s, early 2000s, when I just totally separated. Well, not entirely, but I more or less moved on from the corporate and commercial world. Mm-hmm. Because I would be doing a lot of conventions, I'd be doing a lot of corporate image videos and stuff like that. I wasn't really doing a whole lot of independent motion picture work at all. And I'm going to try to steer clear of calling it film work, simply because we're not shooting on that medium anymore. Or at least not most independents. So to me, it's motion picture work as opposed to film work. So, where was I going with this?
Progression into the
progression.
Field,
Progression.
Yes.
Film. That's where I was. Sure. Where was that? So, just lots of different commercial and corporate stuff. None of it really notable for anything really, except just getting me behind the camera, getting me editing. As a matter of fact, that's my first professional gig, was as an editor, and I started that in the early 90s. So I've been editing longer than I've been a filmmaker, which is actually a good spot to start out in, approaching everything as an editor. We'll get to that later. But so cultivating a sense of understanding of all the equipment, all of the pieces that need to go into this happened, and I eventually got up with Brad Ambrose and Andy Ambrose, and they were doing a movie called Whisper. This was probably my first legitimate film experience. And they were shooting on 16 millimeter. And I got in with them, I think I was helping as a PA toward the end of the shoot, and eventually I went on to edit that feature. And I got to know a number of people that were involved, and some of whom were doing a really big feature very soon after called Strike the Tent at that time, and it later became The Last Confederate. Julian Adams and Eric Holloway, I met those guys on the set of Whisper. And I became a producer and a unit production manager and a number of other things on The Last Confederate. I'm just going to try to call it Last Confederate since that's what everyone's going to know it as now. But that's the first legitimate release that we had, or that I had been involved with. We shot on 35 millimeter. So that was a legitimate film as well. And it was a pretty huge ordeal, especially since I hadn't done anything to that scale. It was originally started with a bunch of friends just sitting around, what are we going to do? How much money are we going to throw at it? Who's doing what? And it sort of evolved into something else, something that we spent $1 million plus on. But it was a Civil War film, and stupidly we were going out to shoot a very indie, gritty, $70,000 or less feature film originally, and it turned out to be something far bigger than that. And we got decent stars involved, not today's present stars, but stars of yesteryears, but they're still very vital. We had Mickey Rooney involved in it. We had Tippi Hedren. We had Lee Majors, and we even had a couple of other more notable faces from today's pop genre, like Edwin McCain. He was in the scene that I was in. But so from there, actually, Strike the Tent, The Last Confederate, is sort of really kind of the trumpet call that I was here and I was really a legitimate filmmaker. That has been distributed through Think Film and is everywhere. You can rent it or buy it. After that, kind of walking off the Strike the Tent set, Last Confederate set. I keep on calling it Strike the Tent because you have to understand that was it was nearly 5 years from, I'd say, the early to mid 2000s all the way up to 2005 that we were shooting that. And it was always called Strike the Tent. So every day on set it was Strike the Tent this, Strike the Tent that. So it's been ingrained. Yeah, obviously I just have a problem dropping that.
Old habits.
So from there I went on to a smaller project, a little $100,000 project called The Rest of Your Life. And then another one after that, a little larger, almost $1 million, called Cold Storage. both of those were very local films, hiring a very local cast. And actually, I lied. Those aren't films, they're motion pictures. Because we shot digitally on both of those. And then after all of that, in 2008, there is a competition that came up sort of to promote the arrival of one of my all-time favorite directors, George A. Romero. Mm-hmm. They were doing a retrospective in Charlotte on his entire body of work, and in order to promote it, they were doing this competition. So they invited any filmmaker that had an interest, both locally, regionally, and nationally, to submit something for this thing. And the real cool thing about it is Romero himself would be the judge. And so I decided to enter that. I created a movie called See the Dead, and that little movie went on to win Romero's appreciation. And from that moment on, I just knew, okay, I can't be stopped at this point. No one's going to stop me. I'm going to just keep on getting better and better and better, and then when I'm ready, I'm going to do my first feature. And I'd promised myself when I was naive and 10 years old that if I don't make it as a filmmaker, because I knew what I wanted to be all my life, if I don't make it as a filmmaker by the time I'm 30, it's over. And here we've gone almost 10 years past 30, and my first feature film will be done by the time I'm 40. So I'm 10 years late. That's okay. That's okay.